She took her mom's shift cleaning a luxury hotel and found a crying little girl who called her, "Mommy." Before we begin, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. Sometimes life changes in the most unexpected places. Not on a grand stage, not in a moment of fame, but in the quiet corners where no one is watching. Emilia Torres was 24 years old. Her long brown hair fell softly over her shoulders, her warm hazel eyes always carrying a certain kindness. She wasn't celebrity. She wasn't wealthy. To the outside world, there was nothing extraordinary about her. Yet on one ordinary day, she would walk into a luxury hotel and walk out with her life forever changed. It all began with a favor. Emilia's mother, a cleaner at the prestigious Rosemont Grand Hotel, had fallen ill. Emilia, tired from her own studies and part-time jobs, agreed to cover her shift. She thought it would be simple: polish the mirrors, tidy the suites, leave without a trace. But destiny had other plans. In one of the grandest suites, tucked behind velvet curtains and golden chandeliers, Emilia heard something. A sound that didn't belong in such a place. A sound so fragile, it seemed to crack through the silence. It was a sound of a child softly crying. Her footsteps slowed. Her heart quickened. She followed the sound, each step pulling her deeper into something she couldn't yet name. Her hand trembled as it rested on the door of the walk-in closet. Slowly, she pushed it open. And there, in the dim light, sat a little girl, no older than 5. Golden blonde hair tangled from tears, sapphire blue eyes glistening with fear. She looked up at Emilia, her lips trembling. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke a single word. "Mommy?" For a moment, time seemed to stop. Emilia didn't know this child. She didn't know why the little girl had mistaken her for someone else. But that word, so small, so broken, would tie her fate to the frightened child, Lily Hawthorne, and to the man who loved her most. And so began a story of how one woman's kindness would heal a broken family, of how loss, love, and destiny would intertwine within the gilded walls of the Rosemont Grand. Emilia Torres lived in a world balanced between quiet resilience and unspoken sacrifice. At 24, she was no stranger to responsibility. Her days were stitched together with part-time jobs, hours at the bookstore, shifts at the cafe, always followed by late-night study sessions under the dim glow of a desk lamp. Her life was simple, but not easy. She wasn't chasing glamour or riches. What mattered to her was her mother. Her mother, a woman with tired hands and a heart that never seemed to rest, had spent years cleaning rooms at the Rosemont Grand Hotel. It was steady work, but hard work. Work that took strength and dignity. Emilia admired her for it. She admired the way her mother smiled, even after 12 hours on her feet, carrying the weight of the world without complaint. Sometimes, Emilia wished she could do more. She would watch her mother scrub away the fingerprints of strangers who would never know her name, and she would think, one day, I'll make things easier for her. But dreams were expensive. College tuition didn't wait. Bills didn't wait. And so, Emilia pushed forward. Every hour of labor, every late-night assignment, another step toward a future she prayed would be brighter. There was a softness to her, though, even in the grind of survival, a quiet grace that made her different. In her hazel eyes lived warmth, the kind of warmth that couldn't be taught, the kind of warmth that made people feel safe, even in silence. She had always been her mother's helper. From childhood to adulthood, she had learned to step in without being asked, to cook when her mother was tired, to carry grocery bags even when they felt too heavy, to put others first, even when she herself felt empty. And so, when her mother called one morning, her voice raspy with illness, asking if Emilia could take her shift at the hotel, Emilia didn't hesitate. She didn't think of the long hours she'd already worked that week. She didn't think of her unfinished assignments waiting on her desk. She thought only of her mother's health. And she said yes. That single decision, made out of love and duty, seemed small at first. After all, what harm was there in covering one shift? She would simply step into her mother's world for a few hours, tidy the suites, change the linens, polish the mirrors until they gleamed. What Emilia couldn't know was that by stepping into her mother's place, she was also stepping into her own destiny. Because somewhere inside the golden halls of the Rosemont Grand, someone was waiting. Someone whose cry would pierce through her ordinary life and draw her into a story that would change everything. The Rosemont Grand Hotel was a world of gleaming chandeliers, polished marble floors, and quiet luxury. To Emilia, it felt almost unreal, like stepping into a dream that didn't belong to her. She moved carefully down the carpeted hallways, her cleaning cart rolling beside her, the faint scent of roses and expensive cologne clinging to the air. Inside the suites, every detail spoke of wealth. Silk curtains heavy enough to block out the sun. Furniture carved with precision. Glassware so fine it looked as though it might shatter if she breathed too close. Emilia wasn't here as a guest, though. She was here to work, to tidy away traces of lives far removed from her own. She had just begun straightening the pillows in one of the grandest rooms when something broke through the silence. A sound, faint at first. So faint she thought she imagined it. She paused, standing still in the center of the room, her ears strained. And then there was again a soft, muffled sound, the sound of a child crying. Her breath caught. In a place like this, a luxury suite meant for powerful businessmen and their families, a space where silence usually reigned. The sound fell out of place, unsettling. Emilia set down the pillow and slowly moved across the room. The crying grew clearer with each step, fragile, heartbreaking. It was coming from behind a door at the far end of the suite. Her hand hovered just above the handle. For a moment, she hesitated. Should she knock? Should she even open it? But something inside her, the same instinct that had always driven her to comfort others, pushed her forward. The door creaked as it opened, revealing the walk-in closet. And there, huddled in the corner beneath hanging coats and silk dresses, was a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 5. Her golden blonde hair was tangled, her cheeks wet with tears, her small arms wrapped tightly around her knees, as though they were her only shield. When the girl looked up, her sapphire blue eyes shimmered with fear. But as they met Emilia's hazel ones, something shifted. Something unexplainable. The child's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, and in a voice so fragile it nearly broke Emilia's heart, she whispered one word. "Mommy?" The sound of it stopped Emilia cold. She blinked, her heart twisting. This child, this beautiful, frightened little soul, thought she was her mother. Emilia crouched slowly, lowering herself to the child's level, her movements soft and careful, as though a single wrong step might shatter the moment. She didn't speak right away. She simply extended her hand, offering comfort. The girl's small fingers clutched Emilia's as if they had been waiting for her all along. And in that instant, Emilia realized this was no ordinary day. This was no ordinary shift. This was the beginning of something she could never have foreseen, because this little girl, Lily Hawthorne, was about to change everything. The air in the suite was still, heavy with the fragile sound of a child's quiet sobs slowly fading. Emilia sat on the floor of the walk-in closet, one hand gently resting over the little girl's trembling fingers. She whispered soft reassurances, though she didn't quite know what words to use. She wasn't this child's mother. Yet in the girl's eyes, that truth didn't seem to matter. Then, suddenly, the silence was broken. The suite door clicked open. Firm footsteps echoed across the polished marble, each one steady, purposeful. Whoever it was, they moved with the kind of confidence that belonged to someone who owned the room they walked into. Emilia's breath caught. She turned her head toward the sound, her heart pounding. And then he appeared. Adrian Hawthorne, tall, broad-shouldered. His presence filled the doorway like a shadow. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, every detail sharp and precise, from the crisp line of his jacket to the shine of his cufflinks. His dark blonde hair was neatly combed back, though a single rebellious strand had fallen against his stormy gray eyes. Eyes that narrowed the moment they landed on Emilia. But it wasn't her that caught his full attention. It was the sight of his daughter, Lily, clinging to a stranger's hand. For the briefest moment, the polished mask of the businessman faltered. Shock flickered across his face. Surprise and something else. Something almost like disbelief. because Lily, his guarded, shy little girl, was pressed against this young woman as though she had known her forever. His voice cut through the air, deep and steady, though laced with suspicion. "What's going on here?" Emilia startled, her lips parting, but no words came out at first. She rose slowly from the floor, still holding Lily's small hand. She opened her mouth to explain, to say she was only here to clean, but Lily's fragile voice spoke before she could. "Don't go, Mommy." The words hit him like a blow. Adrian's eyes widened, and his gaze darted between his daughter and Emilia. For a man used to boardrooms, contracts, and negotiations, this moment disarmed him completely. Emilia, too, felt her throat tighten. She looked at Adrian, searching for what to say, but his expression was unreadable, a storm brewing behind those gray eyes. For a heartbeat, the three of them stood frozen in a fragile triangle. A grieving child, a wary father, and a young woman caught between worlds. Adrian finally stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "My daughter has never trusted anyone so easily." There was a weight to his words, as though he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. Emilia lowered her gaze, unsure how to respond. She wasn't trying to take anyone's place. She wasn't chasing anything. She had simply opened a door and found a child who needed her. And though Adrian couldn't see it yet this moment, the sight of his daughter reaching for Emilia with such innocent certainty would linger with him. It would unsettle him, haunt him, and eventually change him. Because this wasn't just a chance encounter. This was the first spark of a bond that would challenge everything Adrian thought he knew about trust, about love, about family. Adrian Hawthorne was not a man who asked for help. He built his life on discipline, on control. Deals closed with a single handshake. Problems solved with money, precision, and strategy. To the world, he was untouchable. But in the quiet of that suite, watching his daughter cling to Emilia Torres with tear-stained cheeks and trembling arms, something inside him shifted. He had tried everything. Nannies with glowing recommendations, professionals trained to handle children with care. Yet Lily had always recoiled, retreating deeper into her shell. She spoke little. She trusted even less. And now, here she was, resting her small head against the shoulder of a stranger. Emilia stood awkwardly, unsure whether to let go or to hold tighter. Her hazel eyes flickered between father and child, torn between apology and compassion. She wanted to explain that this wasn't her doing, that she had stumbled into something far beyond her role as a cleaner. But Lily's grip told another story. Adrian cleared his throat. The usual certainty in his voice faltered, replaced by a quiet hesitation. "My mother usually helps with Lily, but she's traveling overseas for a few weeks." He paused, his gaze settling on Emilia with the sharpness of a man making calculations. "And I cannot always be here." The truth in his words hung heavy. He had board meetings, contracts to sign, a company that demanded every hour of his attention. But behind the businessman's polished exterior, there was a father, exhausted, stretched thin, and afraid of failing the one person who mattered most. Lily's small fingers clung tighter to Emilia's sleeve. The child's eyes pleaded silently in a way words never could. And so Adrian asked the unthinkable, "Stay, at least until my mother returns. Be here for her." Emilia's lips parted in shock. "Me? You?" he replied firmly. Though his voice carried a threat of vulnerability he rarely allowed anyone to hear. "For some reason, she trusts you. That's rare." The room seemed to still. Emilia's heart pounded in her chest. She had come here only to help her mother, to work a shift and then disappear back into her ordinary life. She hadn't expected this. She wanted to refuse. After all, what did she know about caring for the daughter of a wealthy hotel magnate? She was a student, juggling bills, dreams, and responsibilities of her own. She didn't belong in this glittering world of marble floors and velvet curtains. But then she looked down, at Lily's fragile frame pressed against her, at the trust shining in those sapphire blue eyes, at the way the little girl whispered, "Please, Mommy, don't leave." And Emilia knew she couldn't walk away. Not from this child. Not when Lily had already found something in her she hadn't found anywhere else. Her answer came softly, almost against her own will. I'll stay. For her. The moment was quiet, but monumental. In agreeing, Emilia stepped into a role she had never imagined for herself. A role that would demand not just her time, but her heart. And for Adrian Hawthorne, the man who never trusted, never faltered, it was the first time he realized that sometimes the solutions we search for do not come in contracts or strategies. Sometimes they appear in the form of a woman with kind eyes and gentle strength. What none of them knew was that this simple arrangement, born out of desperation, was not temporary at all. It was the beginning of something none of them could yet see, something that would bind them together in ways no one expected. Lily Hawthorne had always been a quiet child. She lived in a world of silence, where shadows of loss loomed larger than laughter. Her father provided everything she could ever need: comfort, security, a home filled with luxury. But there were some things money couldn't buy. A warm embrace when the nightmares came. A gentle hand to wipe away tears. A voice soft enough to chase away the loneliness. And then came Emilia. At first, she moved carefully, almost uncertain of her place. She wasn't family. She wasn't a trained caretaker. She was just Emilia, a young woman with hazel eyes full of kindness, a steady presence that Lily seemed to cling to without question. The first night, Lily refused to sleep alone. She had curled up beside Emilia on the edge of the bed, her small fingers fisted in the fabric of Emilia's sleeve. Emilia read softly from a children's book she found on the nightstand, her voice slow and soothing. Before she finished the final page, Lily's breathing had steadied, her tiny frame finally surrendering to rest. The days that followed unfolded like small miracles. In the mornings, Emilia brushed Lily's golden hair, carefully untangling each knot while humming a tune her own mother used to sing. Lily sat quietly at first, but soon she began to hum along, her voice shy and uncertain, until it grew stronger. In the afternoons, they wandered the hotel gardens together. Emilia knelt among the flowers, showing Lily how to gently touch the petals without crushing them. Lily's laughter, light and unexpected, carried through the air when a butterfly landed on her hand. It was a sound Adrian had almost forgotten, a sound he hadn't heard in months. And in the evenings, Emilia would sit by Lily's side, coloring pictures or building towers from wooden blocks. Each moment stitched another thread of trust between them. Piece by piece, Emilia was weaving warmth back into a child's fragile heart. Adrian noticed. From the doorway, he would often stand quietly, watching. His daughter's smile was rare, almost precious, and yet with Emilia it came so easily. He saw the way Lily leaned into her touch, the way her sapphire eyes softened in her presence. And though he tried to remain composed, there was a tug at something deep inside him, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. For Emilia, though, it wasn't about him. It wasn't about the luxury around her or the sharp suits Adrian wore. It was about Lily, a little girl who had lost too much, too soon. Emilia wasn't replacing anyone. She wasn't trying to fill shoes too sacred to touch. She was simply there, present, patient, and somehow that was enough. Each day, the bond between Emilia and Lily grew stronger, from whispered secrets at bedtime, to soft laughter in the gardens, to the way Lily's small hand automatically reached for Emilia's whenever she was near. What had started as an arrangement, temporary, fragile, uncertain, was quietly becoming something much greater. Because for Lily, Emilia wasn't just a caretaker. She was comfort. She was safety. She was love in its simplest form. And for Emilia, this little girl, this fragile, trusting child, was teaching her something too, that sometimes the heart finds its purpose not in the paths we plan, but in the bonds we never expected to form. Adrian Hawthorne was a man built on walls. Not the kind made of stone or steel, but walls of silence, precision, and control. They had been his armor ever since the night he lost the woman he loved. The world saw him as unshakable, a powerful investor, a man who could turn crumbling hotels into thriving empires. To his peers, he was untouchable. But behind closed doors, he was just a father, trying and failing to piece together a broken home. He told himself that emotions had no place in his life anymore. He buried them beneath endless work. 12-hour days, contracts stacked higher than sleep. He thought he could protect his daughter by keeping everything orderly, structured, safe. Yet Lily's laughter had vanished. Her smile had become rare. And every time he looked into her blue eyes, he saw a reflection of his own loss staring back. And then came Emilia. He hadn't asked for her. He hadn't wanted anyone stepping into that fragile space. But the moment he saw his daughter run to her, the moment Lily clung to her, as if she'd been waiting for her all along, Adrian felt something crack. At first, he tried to resist it. He told himself it was temporary, that Emilia was just here until his mother returned, that this was simply a matter of convenience. But then he began to notice the small things. The way Lily's laughter returned in Emilia's presence, soft at first, then brighter each day. The way Emilia bent to listen, really listen, to a child so many adults brushed aside. The way her warmth filled spaces that had been empty for far too long. Adrian found himself pausing in doorways, his sharp words caught in his throat as he watched them together. He saw Emilia brushing Lily's hair in the mornings, humming quietly. He saw them side by side in the garden, searching for butterflies. He heard Lily's laughter, light, unguarded, slipping through the halls like sunlight breaking into a darkened room. And though he tried to stand at a distance, his heart betrayed him. He began to see Emilia not just as a stranger who had stepped into his world, but as something more. Her gentleness unsettled him. Her sincerity disarmed him. Her strength, quiet but steady, chipped away at the walls he had spent years building. Still, Adrian fought it. How could he allow himself to feel again? To risk the pain of loss once more? How could he invite someone into his daughter's fragile world, only to watch them leave? So he hid behind his armor. He kept his words clipped, his tone controlled, his eyes sharp whenever Emilia caught his gaze. He reminded himself again and again that she didn't belong in his world. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't deny what he saw every time Lily slipped her hand into Emilia's. He couldn't ignore the spark of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. And for a man who had sworn to guard his heart forever, hope was perhaps the most dangerous thing of all, because deep down, Adrian Hawthorne was beginning to realize that maybe the walls he built were not keeping the world out. Maybe they were only keeping love from finding its way back in. Whispers have a way of slipping through gilded halls faster than truth ever can. At the Rosemont Grand, where wealth and appearances reigned above all else, whispers were currency. They clung to marble walls, passed from staff to guests, from guests back to staff, until the story was no longer fact, but poised and dressed as entertainment. And soon, Emilia Torres became the subject of their murmurs. At first, it was small, a passing glance from a housekeeper, a half smile between concierges, words spoken in hushed tones when they thought she couldn't hear. "The girl's clever," one voice whispered. "She's caught the attention of Adrian Hawthorne," another replied. "Imagine, from cleaner to mistress. Some people know how to play the game." Emilia felt it, the way conversations seemed to pause when she entered a room, the way eyes followed her, not with kindness, but with sharp curiosity, as if measuring how long it would take before she reached too high and fell. She wanted to brush it off. She told herself it didn't matter. She wasn't here for them. She was here for Lily, for the little girl who trusted her, who leaned on her, who called her mommy when fear gripped her small heart. But the whispers grew louder. By the time they reached Adrian's ears, they were no longer whispers. They were accusations. Gossip dressed as truth. She's after your money. She wants a place in your world. She knows exactly what she's doing. For a man who lived his life surrounded by contracts, deals, and motives hidden between lines of fine print, the seed of doubt was all it took. Adrian had seen ambition in many forms. Polished smiles, calculated kindness, eyes that lingered too long on his wealth. And though his heart resisted, his mind began to question. What if Emilia was just another? What if every moment, every smile, every act of tenderness was nothing more than a carefully played role? It was easier to doubt than to believe, easier to push away than to risk being hurt again. And so the distance grew. His voice, once softened in her presence, grew cold again. His eyes, once quietly lingering, turned guarded. He spoke to her not as a man drawn to her warmth, but as a businessman addressing an employee. Emilia felt the change like a wound she could not see. She told herself it didn't matter, that Lily was her only reason for staying. But late at night, when the halls were quiet and her heart was heavy, the truth pressed in. It did matter, more than she wanted to admit. Yet in the middle of the storm, Lily remained unchanged. To her, Emilia was not rumor or suspicion. She was comfort. She was love. She was home. And though Adrian's walls rose higher, though the whispers swirled like a storm around them, destiny was not finished. Because soon, in the most public of places, Lily's small voice would cut through every doubt, every rumor, and reveal the truth Adrian had been too afraid to see. The Rosemont Grand had never looked more dazzling. Crystal chandeliers spilled light across polished marble floors. Music floated from a live orchestra, smooth and refined. The grand ballroom glittered with gowns and tailored suits, laughter rising like champagne bubbles into the air. It was a night meant for elegance, for power, for appearances. Adrian Hawthorne moved through the crowd with the ease of a man used to command. His storm gray eyes were steady, his posture immaculate, his every step a silent reminder that this was his world. And yet, beneath the polished exterior, a war waged within him. The rumors clung to his thoughts like shadows. Whispers that Emilia Torres was not what she seemed, that she found her way into his daughter's heart, and perhaps his own with motives more dangerous than love. He had told himself he would keep his distance. He had told himself he wouldn't let her in, and still his gaze searched for her. Emilia stood at the edge of the ballroom, dressed simply, nothing extravagant. The glittering crowd around her made her look almost out of place, yet her quiet grace drew eyes all the same. She didn't belong here, and yet somehow she did. Adrian felt his chest tighten. He turned away before his thoughts betrayed him. Then, Lily's small voice pierced through the music. "Mommy." The sound was innocent, uncalculated, but it silenced the room. Every head turned. The orchestra faltered. Conversation stilled. And there she was, Lily, in a white dress that shimmered like starlight, had broken away from her governess. Her small shoes tapped urgently against the floor as she ran. Not toward Adrian, not toward her grandmother, but straight into Emilia's arms. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A wealthy man's daughter, in the middle of a glittering gala, calling the cleaner's daughter mommy. Emilia froze, her arms instinctively wrapping around Lily's trembling frame. She felt the weight of every stare pressing down on her, the judgment heavy and cruel. Her heart raced, torn between the need to protect Lily and the fear of what Adrian would think. But then she looked up, and she saw him, Adrian, standing across the ballroom, his storm gray eyes locked on them. For the first time, his mask slipped completely. He saw the truth. Not the rumors, not the whispers, but the raw, undeniable bond between his daughter and this woman who had never asked for anything. Lily clung tighter, burying her face in Emilia's shoulder. "Don't leave me," she whispered. And in that single moment, Adrian knew. Emilia wasn't chasing wealth. She wasn't weaving schemes. She was here because she cared. Because she loved his daughter with the kind of pure, unselfish love that no amount of money could buy. The ballroom might have whispered. The world might have judged. But Adrian Hawthorne saw only one thing. The missing piece of a family he thought he had lost forever. He stepped forward, each stride cutting to the murmurs, the music, the glittering facade of the gala. His eyes never left Emilia's. Because tonight, beneath the chandeliers and the weight of expectation, he wasn't just a businessman or a host or a man surrounded by power. He was a father, and a man finally ready to let his guarded heart surrender to love. The ballroom still hummed with whispers long after the orchestra had fallen silent. Eyes followed them, Adrian, Emilia, and Lily, as if the crowd had been granted a glimpse into a story too intimate, too raw, to belong in such a polished world. But for Adrian, none of it mattered. He crossed the floor with steady strides, his heart beating louder than the music had moments before. Each step felt like a choice to let go of doubt, a choice to trust again, a choice to claim what his heart already knew. Emilia stood frozen, Lily cradled against her shoulder. She braced herself for reprimand, for dismissal, for the coldness that had been creeping into his eyes in recent days. She opened her mouth to speak, perhaps to apologize, perhaps to explain, but no words came. Adrian stopped before her. His storm gray eyes softened, stripped of the armor he had worn for so long. For a man so careful with appearances, so precise with every word, his voice trembled as he finally spoke. You were never here for the money. You were never here for me. He glanced down at Lily, still clinging tightly to Emilia. Then his gaze rose again, meeting Emilia's with a vulnerability she had never seen in him. You were here for her. The truth of it hung between them, quiet and undeniable. Emilia's chest tightened, her hazel eyes glistening. She wanted to speak, to tell him she had never asked for this, that all she ever wanted was to help a frightened little girl feel safe again. But Adrian stepped closer, his voice breaking through the silence. I almost let them convince me otherwise. I almost let my fear push you away. He paused, his breath unsteady. But I see it now. You're not chasing wealth. You're not chasing me. You're the piece we've been missing. The piece I've been too blind to see. The crowd around them seemed to fade, their whispers dissolving into nothing. In that moment, there were no chandeliers, no music, no polished walls of the Rosemont Grand. There was only a father, a child, and the woman who had healed them both. Adrian's voice softened, almost a plea. Emilia, stay. Not as an employee, not as a temporary caretaker. Stay as part of this family. With me, with her. Tears welled in Emilia's eyes, spilling before she could stop them. She had never asked for this. She had never sought it. But love, true love, had found her anyway. She looked down at Lily, whose sapphire eyes shone with innocent hope. The little girl whispered softly, Please, Mommy. And that was all Emilia needed. She nodded, her voice breaking as she finally answered, Yes, I'll stay. Adrian exhaled, relief flooding his features, as though a weight he had carried for years had finally lifted. Slowly, carefully, he reached for Emilia's hand, and for the first time in so long, his touch wasn't guarded. It wasn't restrained. It was real. The three of them stood there, no longer strangers bound by circumstance, but a family, born not of perfection, but of love. Later that night, away from the grand ballroom and its watchful eyes, they walked together through the hotel gardens. The air was cool, the sky painted with stars. Lily skipped ahead, her laughter light and free, no longer the sound of a child lost in grief, but of one finally finding home. Adrian and Emilia followed hand in hand, their steps unhurried, their hearts steady. And in that moment, beneath the quiet night sky, it was no longer about a wealthy businessman, a struggling student, or a frightened child. It was about love found in the unlikeliest of places, a new beginning, a promise of family, a story that had started with a whispered mommy and ended with forever. And so, what began as a single shift at a hotel ended as the start of a brand new family. Love found them the most unexpected place and changed everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next tale. This is Heartfelt Tales TV, where every story reminds us that love, hope, and second chances are always closer than we think. Until next time, thank you for watching.